panelists. And after introductions, we have a list of questions that we will go over. All right, so our first panelist we have is Dr. Paula Stamp. Paula Stamp is Director Business Development for PCL Construction Services of California Buildings. In her role with PCL, Paula is responsible for maintaining current client relationships, qualifying and securing new business opportunities, market research, strategic planning, and departmental oversight of business development, marketing, communications, and diversity and inclusion. Paula earned her undergraduate degree from Loyola University, New Orleans, and an MBA and PhD in higher education from Azusa Pacific University in Azusa, California, where she was also an adjunct lecturer. She also holds a certification in strengths approaches to higher education leadership and student success from the Noel Academy for Strengths-Based Education and Leadership at Azusa Pacific University. She has more than 20 years experience in the AEC, that is Architectural Engineering and Construction industry, and carries the designation of Certified Professional Services Marketer conferred by the Society for Marketing Professional Services, that's SMPS. She's an at-large director on the National SMPS board and has been past president of the SMPS LA, Southern California Development Forum, and YWCA Pasadena Foothill Valley. In addition to community service activities, she is an author, speaker, and educator sought after for her expertise in higher education and alternative project delivery methods. And we are going to have you elaborate a bit more on your personal experiences and different roles that you have taken on to get to where you are. But for now, that's the bio for Dr. Stamp. And then we have Fawn as well. Fawn Radmanek is the marketing strategist for PCL Construction's California Vertical Buildings Operations, a 22-year AEC industry professional services marketing veteran. She's a roll-up-your-sleeve strategist with particular expertise in leading teams to winning multi-million and billion-dollar design and construction projects. With attention spans rapidly evolving, Fawn has embraced the challenge to find effective ways to communicate with impact. Combining her experience in graphic design and a passion for the written word, Fawn embraces opportunities to tell stories that bring words and pictures together to engage both hearts and minds. She particularly loves to dive headfirst into giant, messy pursuits with the sole purpose of motivating teams to the win. Fawn is a fellow with the Society of Marketing Professional Services and graduated from St. Mary's College of California with a Bachelor of Arts degree in communication. So these are our two lovely panelists for today. And we will jump right into our first question, if that's all right with our panelists. And we can go back and forth between who answers first. The first question we have is, please share your education and career journey, including what made you decide to pursue the career you currently have, and what road bumps did you overcome along the way? Fawn, we'll start with you.
Okay. So, I mean, specific to graphic design, right? I want to make sure that I connect to that throughout. My education actually started in high school. I graduated a year early. I needed credits. And so I joined a 0-period course, which was journalism, and a 7th period course, which was yearbook. And I just went full throttle in those. And at that time, which was a long time ago, I worked in Aldus PageMaker. So Adobe was not the giant that it is now. It was just a fledgling company at the time. And so I learned how to do desktop layout, really more than anything, at the high school level. And then went into college, ended up working on the newspaper in college, and then had to do a whole lot more with graphic design and desktop publishing. But again, long time ago, so actually had to do what was called paste up at the time to be able to print things. So I had to cut things out with X-Acto knives on a light board and then paste it and send it in to be printed. Very old school. And my degree, wasn't formally trained in graphic design, right? So I did it all through extracurriculars, and my degree was really in communication. So it was about how people communicate, which I had no idea that those two things would really go together as I went along in my career. I was pretty focused on journalism and then didn't end up going that route coming out of college, and fell into helping professors at Chico State find grant funding for variety of projects. And to help them, that meant I responded to what were called requests for proposals. And as a part of that job, I was also hired to do web design for them. And I really got in doing on-the-job training, where I had quite literally learned how to program HTML for 3 pages to connect to each other with a graphic in it, and convinced my new employer that I needed to have a web design program editor that would help me do more of the graphics piece. But I had to learn how to do a lot of those pieces. Still very early days, we're talking 2000s, early 2000s. And then went from there, ended up getting hired by a public outreach and transportation planning firm to come in and do graphic design for them. At the time, they did a lot of print newsletters for the variety of projects that they were doing. They needed somebody who could manage a very small firm, so needed somebody who could manage their IT systems, manage their admin staff, and also produce viable graphic design. And so I learned, again, a lot of on-the-job training. Was at that time working in it had started working in now what was Adobe, and also Macromedia Freehand, which Adobe eventually bought, and did a lot of free design for them. Not free design, I was paid. And then and then fast forward, I kept working my way through the industry, but everything I did, I ended up going into a water wastewater engineering firm. Not super exciting, but needed the graphic design to be able to put proposals together for them. Also did a lot of advertising work, and pretty much anything they needed. Learned also to do technical design, and to do things to scale, to be able to provide explanatory graphics for the variety of processes and proposal pieces that they were putting together for that particular firm. And then went on to work for a firm called CDM Smith. They're a large international environmental engineering firm. And at that firm, they had separate graphic artists. So I actually wasn't a graphic artist for a little while, and I actually got to work with some really great graphic artists who taught me a lot of things about what I was doing. And I still was doing a fair amount of layout design, that kind of thing. And then I had the opportunity about 8 years ago to come to PCL. PCL did not have an in-house graphic artist, so I picked that back up again. And I like to think I brought a little of that actually to PCL. And did a lot in PowerPoint design, still advertising, more proposal document development, have done everything from wall graphics to window design, and a little bit and other things as well. I've put those talents to use in SMPS, the professional organization I've worked for, to develop infographics and other types of graphic materials. Also work with graphic designers, and a couple of years ago had the opportunity to actually go through the process of hiring one. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me, of seeing what others put out into the space to be hired that way. The big challenges that I've run into is I don't get to be a specialist of one thing, right? I've always had to be a Jill of all trades. And so it's never been graphic design just by itself, although I truly enjoy it. It comes with words. And so I've had to find, how do those two things come together? And always differentiating yourself, right? How do I stand out from other people? in how I bring those talents together to be a valuable employee, right, to the variety of firms that I've worked for. The other piece, quite honestly, is I work in technical firms, right? So our business right now at PCL is about construction. So we are always looking to find new work for our operations folks to go out and do. The focus is not the work that I do, right? My work is supportive to that. And that's been my experience all along. So one of the challenges has always been to be able to represent myself as an expert in my own space, in my own right, with people who don't necessarily understand what I bring to the table or how I can help benefit when you're in an operational space, right? They don't really understand what I do every day. So I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, is just helping to bridge that communication. It also comes with great opportunities to really lean into that and I don't know, innovate with people. So I've gotten to do a lot of that as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Stamp, we'll pass it over to you for our first question.
Yeah, so my journey with graphic design started when I was in college, and I applied for and was hired to be the student marketing manager for a facility called the Recplex. And it's really the recreational complex where our basketball team played, as well as there was workout facilities and that kind of thing. And that was really my first introduction to graphic design, and pulling the graphic design together, as Fawn said, with the words. So I was responsible for all the advertising of the facility and programs. I was responsible for our monthly newsletter that we would do. And that entailed not only laying it out in PageMaker, that's what I learned first, was PageMaker. It also included writing all the articles, interviewing people. And so that was really great. It set me up for after I graduated from college, and when I went to go work for a retail store called Contempo Casuals. And at the time I was working there, it was also the time that this movie came out called Clueless that was huge, and the stars would go shopping in Contempo. So it was really cool. So I also had a chance to put forward my ideas on advertising within the store. So that was really wonderful too. And then I moved into working for a firm that was, they sold office equipment and office supplies. And so I was there for quite a while, and I was worked my way there to being their marketing manager too. And I had some of the similar responsibilities that I had when I was in college, which was great. But now this was for a corporate company that had locations all across Southern California at the time. And so I was responsible for their monthly newsletter, both writing it and doing the layout in still PageMaker at the time. And I'm also responsible, they had a retail presence. So I was responsible for the advertising for the retail presence, but that also not only included the print advertising, it also included media. So I also had experience with media buys and negotiating those types of contracts. And then at one point, my father-in-law at the time was a civil engineer, and he's like, hey, there's this construction company that's looking for a marketing associate, and I think you'd be really good, in that role. And I was just finishing up my master's degree at the time. So I'm like, well, it's probably a good time to shift over to something new. So that's when I came into the proposal space and married up the graphic design with proposal writing and overseeing how we communicate to clients, whether they're public or private clients, and how we secure work that way. So I was in that position for 2 years, and then was recruited to come over to PCL. So now I've been here at PCL for 21 years and expanded again what I was doing in the graphic design space, working not only with the Adobe Creative Suites, and mostly with now it's in design and Photoshop and Illustrator. So those are the three that I worked most in, and learning, how to work in those programs, and then helping the staff that I had learn it as well. So it was a great journey when I first started because we were all learning together, and it was really great to be able to interact with the staff and with the team, and kind of grow up in learning the software and how to use it together. So then I at one point had a vice president and district manager who said, you know what, I really feel like you're strongest on the business development side, so we need to get you a marketing manager. I'm like, I don't need a marketing manager. I'm totally cool. I can do all of it. He's like, no, I think you need a marketing manager. And I'm like, no, I do not need a marketing manager, but you know what? I'm going to do the analysis and see where my time is spent. And, like, he's telling me to hire somebody, I'm telling him no. So anyways, after I did the analysis, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I do a lot of marketing and I don't get out to do the business development as much. So yeah, we need to hire a marketing manager. So I'm fortunate enough to hire Fawn into that position and see her grow during the time she's been here. And so now Fawn has become really just not only a resource, but just really a valued member of the team here. Like, I don't think any of us here in California buildings could do our jobs if Fawn wasn't here. And so now she works for our senior vice president and has more of a regional focus and can have an imprint on everything that we're doing from a marketing and communication standpoint. And I think that's the power of marketing as a whole. But also, when you look at graphic design, that's how she and I both came into our positions. We started off doing graphic design. So there's definitely something to be said for that.
That's so fascinating. I like that story, hearing about the connections and the journey that you both have been on. So it brings me to our next question. What is your current position and how would you describe your current work? And this time we'll start with you, Dr. Stamp.
So my current position is with business development. And so what that means is, because nobody ever really knows what that means, but what it means is I have first contact with the clients that we ultimately do business with. So that first contact could be through an industry event. There's many organizations that are within the architecture, engineering, and construction industry that put on events where clients go to speak about their projects and about their work and how to get work with them. So I could meet them through that avenue. It could also be through other contacts that I have that recommend PCL and myself to go talk to the client. And it could just be from me directly calling them or asking for a meeting with them. So that's primarily like the big picture of what I do, but it also involves a high degree of strategy. Whether it be how we approach the client, and once we have an understanding of what the client is doing, how we approach pursuing the individual projects the client has. And it also is highly collaborative, which is what I love about this position. I get to work with Fawn a lot, as well as with our operations team and with the other marketing professionals that we have on staff. And so there's a degree of strategizing on how do we win this job and what is the value proposition that we bring. And so business development is a part of asking the questions of the client so that we can formulate those strategies in-house when we go to pursue the work. That's essentially what I do.
Perfect. And then Fawn, for you.
So my role is a little different now than where Paula left off with me as the marketing manager. Last year, I transitioned to what we call a marketing strategist role, and it's a role that was made up just for me. So I am the expert in it, I guess, from that perspective. But we got to write it together, and really Paula help me understand it. I'm more of an internal consultant than anything else. And I consult on a lot of different things. the main buckets though that I participate in are communication strategy. So I lead our communications team here in any of our external as well as our internal communications. And I'll go into a little more of that in a minute. And then I also do pursuit strategy. So I work with Paula and our other business development team to team members to help strategize from behind the scenes. They definitely are the face for the company. I just operate behind. And what we can do, and much like Paula talked about, it's a lot about asking questions and helping to not necessarily having the ideas, but helping to get the team to generate the ideas that need to be followed. Sometimes it's about ideating as well, which I love that part of it. And then another part of pursuit strategy is then how to take that value proposition that Paula was talking about and bringing that into our proposal documents, both in words and also visually how they impact us for the client. And then also thinking about like the readership, right? People now read differently than they once did before. We definitely have clients who read every single word, and we have to prepare for those folks, right? But we also have folks who don't read every single word and they skim and they, go through, and we need them to get the same concept of us as the folks who are reading every word. So where are opportunities to do that as well? And then the third bucket is sort of an interesting one, and it really ties the other two together, which is it's called executive initiatives, and it's what it sounds like. Basically, whatever our executives want me to work on, that's what I do. And where that's come together really in the communication, marketing, graphic space for me, especially in the last few years, has been in developing. I've really become a live stream expert, weirdly, not really planning on that, but have been developing ways for our leadership to be able to be seen by all of our folks internally. And that also then extended to creating a full internal conference with over 100 presenters that were speaking over a 5-hour period. And that included a lot of video development as well, where I even had to do, I created a video where we had our main speaker speaking to herself. And so had to figure out how to make that accurate for a small period of time. I do a lot of work now with video, both in the live stream space as well as developing videos to help tell our stories. And it's amazing how that graphic design background really figures into that, because I understand how to tell a visual story. And so it's not just writing anymore, but how do you have that impact from a visual standpoint? Working, that's kind of how the two come together. And that executive initiative box, though, is working in that live stream space, working in videos, thinking about other impactful ways to get messaging out both internally and externally. So it's every day is a different day in my job. There's no day where I do the same thing. I love that. And I never know what fun challenge someone will bring in my door. And I never know which piece of my job it's going to pull on, right? Whether it'll be communications, marketing, or something totally new.
Wonderful. Our third question, pieces of this you may have already answered, but other pieces, feel free to elaborate. What are some of your favorite things about your work and some of the challenges you face? And we'll start with you, Fawn, this time.
My favorite thing to do in my work is to solve something that has not been solved before. I really, really love, I love that space. A lot of people find that very uncomfortable because they don't have something to follow. But I love creating a new path and finding the resources that help to do it. So I may or may not be the person that that ultimately solves the problem, but I help to find the resources who do, right? And so I love messy problems that we get to get in and solve, because I love getting to that solution space. And the great feeling that comes with working with a team collaboratively, like Paula mentioned, and how when you come through something like that, what that looks like together. And so that's my favorite thing to do. I mean, I have talked a little bit about challenges, but I mean, the challenge really is each day making sure that what I'm doing has impact and value for the people that I work with. I think one of the most important things about my own career path and framing for myself has been having a greater purpose than just the design, than just the words, than just the task at hand, but instead understanding that my job impacts people both at an emotional level, as well as you know, at a tactile level, right? Because do they have a job to go to? And that's something that Paula and I have in common.
All right, I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Stamp.
Yeah, I think the most fun for me is the strategy development ideation, but specific to trying to overcome a challenge or something that we have never done before. So when we go into new markets, specifically, you know, we don't have experience in those markets, then how do you get into them? And I love being able to rise to that challenge and say, it doesn't matter that we haven't done it before. We can still do it. I'll find a way to get us in. And so it's fun to do that and to work with the team to be able to accomplish, you know, what's really kind of a big, hairy, audacious goal of getting into new markets, or to just something new in general. I think the challenge for me is kind of similar to Fawn's. We really have a family atmosphere at PCL, and I think actually within the industry in general, it's really seen that way. And so we really work hard to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do correctly so that we can, you know, meet the goals that we have, so that we don't have to worry about whether, you know, what job this person is going to next, because the operations people 100% really rely on what we do and our estimating staff to ensure that, you know, there's another job to go to. So I think that's probably the most challenging part, but that's also probably the most rewarding and the most motivating part of what I do, which is why I love the first part of the challenge of, you know, getting into a market that we've never been in before.
Wonderful. Number fourth question. What qualifications, such as education level, training, certifications, licenses, experience, etc., are required for entry into this kind of work? If you participate in hiring, and Fawn, you did mention that you recently went through this, what impresses you the most when you are considering hiring somebody? We will start with Dr. Stamp.
I'm going to pull a quick one and send it over to Fawn, because she actually has been the most direct in hiring for these positions. Like, I will talk to people once she's vetted. So she's probably the better person to talk about that.
Perfect. We'll pass it over to you.
So, you know, it's such a tough question because there's lots of certifications you can go get. There's lots of education that you can have, and there is a certain amount that you need, right? Because we do need people to functionally come in and bring the skills to the job to an extent, right? But it depends on the position we're hiring for. For like proposal focused folks, right? Our proposal specialists, it's great if they come in with InDesign experience. But we've actually found that we can send somebody in who knows how to write to get some training, like a 2-day training, right? And they can come back and have really quite excellent skills in the InDesign space to be able to produce what we need to do with those documents. And even more so now because we have graphic design in-house, because our graphic designer can do the more complex pieces. Whereas when you're looking at a graphic designer, right, we wanted somebody who actually understood the Adobe Creative Suite and really understood it, not kind of, right? And could really actually draw in Illustrator, not just edit in Illustrator, right? So being able to create new graphics from scratch without, you know, copying something or following, and being able to ideate in that space was a really important skill set that needed to come. But it wasn't necessarily certification based, right? And it wasn't necessarily how much education. It was really about what was your skill level. And coupled with, honestly, it doesn't matter what position, it's behavioral, right? How that person shows up, how that person brings those skills to the table, how they interact with other people. Skills that I look for in that space, like resourcefulness, is that one I find is so hard to teach. So when somebody comes in and they're resourceful and they know how to go and solve problems on their own, or if they don't know how to solve a problem, they know to go ask questions to be able to get there. Those are really important skills to me and anybody coming into the role. And then on the graphic side, really for us, being able to innovate and ideate were really important parts of that, and start to be able to grasp the business that we're in, so that those graphics are value added, not just pretty pictures. So that those were things I was looking for. In my experience of actually hiring people in this space, what I found was I saw a lot of different great content, right, that people had developed, created. It was really hard to distinguish it from the next, right? Everybody had ads, everybody had flyers, everybody had something else, right? And there might be an aesthetic I liked, but there might be an aesthetic I didn't like. And it was really hard to know, even in those spaces, how much that individual did themselves, if they were in a design house, how much that was a shared product. And so the thing that I really found was important was, how did people independently distinguish themselves from others and in that space, right? What did they uniquely bring to the table? Because everybody brought a portfolio. But what was it that they brought that was different from what everybody else did? And it wasn't this particular design or, you know, this particular aesthetic. A lot of it was either behavioral. And then for me, it did come down to skill sets. The individual we ended up hiring when we were looking for that could actually really draw, not just create things from, you know, InDesign shapes or Illustrator shapes, that kind of thing. But she actually could, I mean, she had this great, she would have been here with us today, but she had an early family moment. But she had this great, when I met her, she had this great image of I'm going to try to do this with my blur on, but of a hand coming up, and you could see all the way down to the wrist with this ice cream sandwich in their hand. And it was for a group that had an ice cream sandwich product. And so I was looking at it and I'm like, did you draw that hand? And she said, yeah, I did. It's my hand. And I said, did you just hold it there and like draw it? And she said, no, I took a picture and then I drew it from the picture. And I'm like, how long did that take you? Because in my mind, I'm thinking that would have taken me days to even maybe get close to that, right? Because I am definitely, when it comes to graphics, I'm definitely the shapes and, you know, that person in Illustrator, right? I don't hand draw. And she was like, oh, it just took me a couple of hours. And I was just absolutely floored. And consistently, since we've brought her on board, she's developed just phenomenal new design, and has behaviorally, right? She has her ideas and they're great ideas. It doesn't always align with the need of her customer, right? Which are all internal customers. And so she'll come to me and say, I don't know what to do with this. And I'm like, hear them, listen to what they're saying about what they need, and then find a way in the path with what they need to get there, because she's also defending corporate brand, right? She does have to maintain that balance between her own ideas and what our branding standards are. But it's amazing how she's been able to navigate those conversations to lead them along to something that is visually a phenomenal product, captures what the intent was and what they desired for it to be, and also, you know, was something she could be proud of.
Did you want to add anything to that, Dr. Stamp?
Nope, I'd say it was perfect.
Fabulous. That was a lot of great information, you know, from having something that stands out to those critical thinking, problem solving, being resourceful skills. So that definitely helpful information for our students. So our next question is kind of a fun one, I think. Is there anything you wish you knew about your field or career when you were a college student? So looking back on, you know, college you, is there anything that you would have told yourself? Let's go with you, Dr. Stamp.
Yeah, when people ask me how I got started in this industry, I always say by accident, because no one ever went to school for it. And I think, you know, if there's one thing I would tell my younger self, and it's something I realized later, is, you know, take a chance. Like, I didn't intend to come into this field, and I was introduced to it at a point when I was ready to do that. But prior to that, I always assumed that my marketing degree would be, you know, it'd be retail based, it might be graphic design based. I never thought it would ever be doing what I'm doing right now. And so I'm really glad I was open to it at the time I was, but back in school, I would never have been open to this. I feel like I didn't go to school for that, so I don't want to do that. So I say be open to, you know, just trying something new and seeing, you know, how it goes, even if it's not, you know, lockstep in line with what you've been learning right now.
Perfect. And I'll pass it over to you, Fawn.
I absolutely support exactly what Paula said, but to give a slightly different option, that way I'm not just like, me too, is I think the other thing, is maybe has come through a little bit as a theme of some of the things I've talked about, is understanding that the one skill set alone is not enough, right? So just having graphic design doesn't distinguish you from others or differentiate you. And in order to be a marketable, right, employee or potential employee, having things that make you stand out, ways to combine that skill with other skills to elevate it, are, I think, really valuable things. So for me, that's, I do graphic design, right? But it comes together with words. And I look at that as content overall, right? And how do those things play together and function together? And then, like Paula said, being willing to take those skills and move into a new direction, because I guarantee you I had no idea I'd be doing live stream work, you know, at this point. But there was actually graphic design in that. I had to design the look and the feel of the backgrounds of what we were doing, and how the different video content would come into this space. And those were really important skills and valuable skills, but it also had so much more involved. And so being able to bring those other differentiating factors so that you have that great skill set and something more.
Perfect. All right, our next question. What future do you predict for the job market in this career? And follow up with that, what trends do you see developing over the next few years? Fawn, we'll start with you.
It's been a crazy time in marketing for the last 2 years. I mean, it's been coming for a while, right? We've seen social media come in. Sorry, I'm old. Didn't start with social media, right? But social media has had a new space, and for our part of the industry in particular, we're a little slow sometimes to adopt things. So social media is just really gaining ground for us in a lot of ways, where maybe your .coms, or those don't really exist anymore, but but like your digital space is much more active in that. And so social media and digital communications, all of this space that's really become important in the last few years because of the pandemic, has really changed the face of marketing, especially in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Proposals are sort of, how do we say this? I don't want to put them down because they're such a vital part of what we do, but they are a more archaic part. And so the pandemic really forced them to become digital. Honestly, we were still printing most proposals until March of 2020. And it's only in, I mean, I don't think we've printed one, or if we do, it's very rare that we print them anymore. And so we've had the opportunity to expand into the digital space with proposals, but we also now see so much more digital content needing to be developed that we now, for the first time really in AEC, we're seeing the creation of real digital marketing positions. And so that's very new, and something that I anticipate will continue. And I don't know, this is guessing, but I'm expecting to see some greater division now in the marketing space, specifically where you have people who are more focused on digital communication and people who are more focused on proposals. And I anticipate that those will be more streamlined career paths in the near future, if not already there.
Wonderful.
And I would add to that, so a little bit of a history lesson. So we've been through a couple of what I would call disruptive economic events in the last 20 years, with the dot-com bust in the early 2000s, the recession in 2008, now the pandemic. And every single time we go through a disruptive period like that, within our industry, the architecture, engineering, construction industry, we lose marketing professionals every single time, and they don't come back. So I think for within our industry, we're at a pivotal moment of trying to build up marketing professionals that have the skill sets that Fawn has been talking about, and are willing to branch into other areas of the marketing space, such as the digital, the social media, but also the traditional proposal space, which is really still the primary way that we gain work. And when I say we, I mean, that's everybody, that's architects, engineers, and contractors. And so we certainly struggle in that space. And it's more of a struggle, I think, for marketing professionals in this industry, because there is no actual curriculum around what we do in a four-year university or a community college. Like, there's just nothing that is comparable. So we're trying to find, this ragtag group of people that want to come over and do this. And there's really no hub for it, like you would have for a traditional business background if you're accounting or you're doing traditional marketing. We just don't have that. So I think for us, when you look at what's happening now and what the future holds, that's part of the future. And that's one of the things that we're really, trying to get our arms around right now.
Those are some really good insights into the field. Before I ask our final question, I just want to invite our students who are here with us. If you have any questions for our panelists, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask them, or if you want to add them into the chat, definitely go ahead and do that. All right, so our final question until we get to our student questions. What advice would you give to students looking to enter this career? And Dr. Stamp, we'll start with you.
Wow, so I would say it's kind of a spin on what I've already said. Just be open to the possibilities, and looking at how you're using what you're learning in a different way. So don't shy away from a particular field because you think, oh, I don't really, like, my experience doesn't fit with that. But if you really look at, the experience that you do have and the skill sets that you do have, you'll actually find, I believe, that it's transferable to a ton of other fields that you hadn't thought of. And that certainly is what happened to me. I would never have thought that construction would be where I would be today, but it's a great field to be in. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, Fawn, pass it over to you.
And I agree 100% again with what Paula said. In addition to that, I think I would tell people that once, regardless of whether it's architecture, engineering, or construction, or even a field completely outside of that, right, that you're bringing your graphics capabilities to, or your marketing capabilities to, that you have to learn that business. I swear it is the key to my success, is not how phenomenal I am in any of those skill set spaces, but the fact that I've learned our business, that I understand what the folks that I'm helping to get work, do, and how their days go. And I understand better from a financial standpoint, right? Where money comes from, where money goes, how it gets used, right? And the importance of it. And understanding that business side, while I don't make that many decisions in the business side, understanding it really helps me to apply what I do so much more effectively.
Perfect. And I do have to say, it's been very refreshing to hear about these, unexpected paths. We've seen graphic designers for Disney, or, like the animation kind of organizations, and, there's so many other paths. So this is very refreshing and a good looking glass for our students, just what different possibilities there are pursuing this kind of profession. I do want to invite our students. If you have any questions at this point in time, you can unmute or type them in the chat.